Imagine a world where anyone can enter a store and buy drugs like a soda, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, all released, regulated, and taxed. Is that the end of the war against drugs or the beginning of a social collapse? On the one hand, advocates of legalization say that the ban has never worked, that the state spends trillions in a lost war, and that each should have the right to decide what it does with one's own body. On the other, critics warn, if we already have overdose epidemics and drug-related crimes, imagine everything legalized. Was it a time bomb about to explode? After all, to release the use of drugs would save lives, or would it be an announced tragedy? Get ready, because in this video we will dissect this theme without censorship and without fear of controversy. The war against drugs has lasted decades, and we are honest, it failed. Thousands of people are arrested every year. Billions of dollars are spent on repression, and yet trafficking remains stronger than ever. If the ban worked, the problem would have been resolved, right? On the other hand, does the solution really come to release everything? If drugs are legalized, will consumption increase? Will it decrease? Will crime end, or will only change shape? Some countries have tried partial legalization, such as Canada, and some US states with marijuana. Others were even further, such as Portugal, which decriminalized all drugs. But we also have the other extreme. Countries with severe penalties for users and traffickers, such as Indonesia and Saudi Arabia. Who is right in this story? This debate involves moral, economic, and public health issues. On the one hand, we have those who argue that each one has the right to do whatever they want with their own body. On the other, those who warn that drugs not only affect the user, but also the surrounding society. If legalization is the way, how to ensure that it does not become a public health disaster? And if the ban is maintained, how to end trafficking and all the violence it brings? Now let's go into the arguments on each side of this clash. Arguments in favor of legalization. If the war against drugs failed, then what would be the alternative? For advocates of legalization, the answer is simple: regular control and taxation. The biggest argument in favor of legalization is that trafficking exists only because drugs are illegal. Think about it. When alcohol was banned in the United States in the 1920s, it did not end consumption. On the contrary, it created a black market dominated by violent gangs. The same happens today with drugs. If the state takes control, traffickers lose their largest source of income. Less money for cartels, less corruption, less violence. Do you think organized crime would survive without the billionaire drug profit? In many countries, much of the prison population is made up of users and small traffickers. They are young, often low income, who enter the crime for lack of opportunities and end up sentenced to long penalties. Now think, is it worth spending public money to arrest those who use drugs? Meanwhile, large traffickers remain loose or corrupt the system. If drugs were regulated, police could focus on more serious crimes. How many people die from overdose or consuming adulterated drugs? Today, users do not know what they are buying. In the illegal market, cocaine may come mixed with lethal substances, tablets can be counterfeit, and even marijuana may contain hazardous chemicals. If the state controlled production and sale, it could guarantee a minimum of quality and safety. Instead of combating the user, the focus would be on to reduce damage, offer treatment, and educate about risks. Let's talk about money. Today, traffic moves billions, but all this money goes to the crime. Now imagine if this market was taxed. In Canada and the US, the legalization of marijuana generated billions of dollars in taxes used for health, education, and infrastructure. And this is only with marijuana. If other drugs were regulated, the financial impact would be gigantic. And in the end, many argue that drug use must be an individual decision. If a person wants to drink until they fall or smoke a cigarette knowing that it is bad, Why would the same principle not apply to other drugs? Should the state protect people themselves, or should each one be free to do whatever he wants with his own body as long as he does not harm others? Arguments against legalization. If you release drugs with a solution to the problem, why do so many countries still resist? Critics of legalization warn this is not a matter of individual freedom, but of social impact. Here are the main arguments against. Who defends legalization believes that consumption can be controlled, but will it be? Look at alcohol and cigarette. They are legalized and widely available drugs, and millions of people are addicted to them. If cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine are sold freely, will more people try? Will addiction spread? Who guarantees that an increase in consumption will not generate a collapse in the health system? Legalization does not eliminate damage that drugs cause. On the contrary, it can facilitate access to extremely addictive and destructive substances. Heroin, crack, fentanyl are drugs that devastate people's lives. If we already have overdose epidemics in some countries, imagine if everything is released. Who will pay this bill? Who will deal with the increase in drug addicts, unemployed, and destroyed families? The idea that legalization will destroy trafficking seems logical, but will organized crime simply accept to lose billions of dollars? Or will they adapt? If drugs are sold legally, traffickers can react in many ways. Reduce prices to compete with the legal market, create new drugs even more powerful and addictive, deepen in other crimes, such as extortion, kidnappings, and human trafficking. Organized crime never disappears. It reinvents itself. Imagine a scenario where a larger portion of the population is under the influence of drugs regularly. How would this affect productivity at work? Companies would have to deal with less productive employees, dependence removal, and even work accidents. Also, who guarantees that legalization will not create a new generation of drug addicts, directly affecting the economy and increasing public health costs? Finally, there is a point that many raise: the social and moral impact of legalization. If the state decides that drugs are acceptable and normalizes consumption, what message does this pass on to society? Doesn't this encourage use among young people and adolescents? If we can't even control alcohol and cigarette use, how to ensure that heavier drugs do not become a widespread problem? In addition, chemical dependence destroys families. Many addicts are not only harming themselves, but also parents, children, and spouses. Is it worth legalizing something that can ruin lives so easily? Conclusion: so what to do? Release drug use and risk creating a social collapse, or maintaining a ban and continuing to see trafficking to dominate? The truth is that there is no easy answer. Both sides of this debate have strong arguments, and each country that tried a different model had varied results. What we know for sure is that the current system does not work. The ban did not prevent consumption, did not eliminate trafficking, and did not prevent millions of people from falling into addiction. But does the solution really go to legalize everything? Perhaps the way is not so extreme on one side or the other. What if the key is in the middle ground? Smarter regulation, damage reduction policies, investment in education and treatment rather than blind repression? And now I want to know about you. Do you think drug legalization would be a breakthrough or a disaster? What should your country do? Comment down here, because this debate needs to happen. Do not forget to leave the like, share this video and subscribe to the channel, because here we are not afraid to tell the truth.